we're good.
This is our fashion history presentation from 1940 to 1949. And my name is Brittany, and I did the designer portion of the presentation. First is Gilbert Adrian, and he started as a designer for Broadway and stayed there until 1925, and then became a Hollywood designer, and is most famously known for designing Dorothy's ruby slippers when he was the creative director for The Wizard of Oz. Next is Norman Norwell, and was best known for his ready-wear designs and had a Parisian influence. And he was one of the first people to receive the Coty Award in the late 40s. And he was known for maintaining the pared down look in the daytime while also having the extravagant look for nightwear. Pauline Tregear was the first to make evening wear more affordable by using cotton and wool fabrics, and is best known for the Tregear suit, which is shown on the side, and also is known for making the double-faced reversible coats for women. Jacques Youssef he focused on perfecting the hourglass shape in his dresses and clothing, and used dramatic pleats, which can be seen in the dress on the right, and also enjoyed using bold and colorful patterns in his designs. Claire McCardle is a female American designer who is best known for her female sportswear, leisure wear, and swimsuits, and her inspiration came from the daily lives of American women. And she also used simple fabrics to reduce the cost so that the normal women could buy her designs.
I'm Danny, and I'll be going over the historical events. In 1941, we had Japan bomb Pearl Harbor in December 7th, and this was a crippling time for the states, and since they were trying to avoid war, and this created, this made it so the U.S. entered war December 8th, and by the United States declaring war on Japan, Germany, and Italy joined forces against the states. And because of the bombing in Pearl Harbor, the United States put anyone of Japanese descent into detention camps. In 1942, because of World War II, we have clothing coupons that were made for clothing regulations that were issued through the law 85. So this made it so women weren't allowed to have ruffles, pleats, hoods, shawls, and pockets. They were only allowed to have one pocket on either blouses or pants. And so it just made it so women had to patch their clothing in a way that wasn't noticeable, but still beautiful for them to wear. And wedding gowns and maternity clothing were shared during that time. In 1944, we had the Theatre de la Mode. It was a French exhibit that was traveling Europe and the United States. This was allowing for French designers to show their work in a third of the scale on mannequins. That way they weren't using so much fabric, and they didn't have to use all the coupons to be able to design and create during this time. In 1945, we had President Franklin Roosevelt die. We also had the first atomic bomb, and that killed lots of people. In World War II, that ended September 2nd, and fashion was about to take a turn. And then we also had the United Nations were formed, and so they all met in San Francisco to be created. In 1947, we had Christian Dior introduce the new look. He was trying to get rid of the women's corset and making them feel comfortable and empowered. And the look just made it so they had rounded shoulders, a smaller waist, and made them look wider in the hips. And this also created the A-line skirt. Princess Elizabeth of England marries Prince Philip. And so during the time, uh, Princess Elizabeth had to use rationing coupons to be allowed um, enough fabric for her wedding gown. And so she had to collect them, and a lot of the people were sending in their personal coupons so that she could afford her wedding gown, but she had to return them because that was illegal for her to use them.
I'm Marissa Finney, and I'm going to go over the characteristics of the clothing during the 1940s. Dresses were still the main piece of clothing that women wore, and because of the war, the fabric was rationed, as Danny mentioned, and so they made their skirts and dresses much shorter to about knee length, and shoulder pads were very big in the dresses, and this really helped create the hourglass shape that was very popular in that decade. Two-piece skirts were also suit skirts were also a big thing, and this was because they could mix and match outfits and essentially extend their wardrobe because they could mix and match it with different pieces. In the early 1940s, because of the fabric rationing, they made their skirts very simple. No pleats were used just to avoid using more fabric than was necessary. But in the later 1940s, they didn't have that restriction anymore, and so they used a lot of pleats and more of the A-line full skirt look. There were a lot of variations of necklines that were used during the decade, whether it was a square, slit, sweetheart, keyhole, or crossed front neckline, but they were all very modest and they didn't show cleavage. With the exception of evening dresses, they did show more of their shoulders and chest in their evening gowns, but compared to today's fashions, it was still little cleavage. Fabric choices and colors became much more bold during this decade, and this is because more choices became available for fabrics to be used. And so they started using a lot more rayon, which was a synthetic fabric that was new during that decade. And so they could use the patterns and bright, bold colors. And then they started using cotton a lot more in house dresses because it was much more comfortable. Women started wearing pants because they were working in the factories. And the pants that they wore were high waisted, and they had a button or a zipper down the side, and they had very wide legs. And I see that this trend has returned full force in today's fashions. I definitely have pants that reflect this same style, and they wore them in denim or linen, just like you would see today as well. The swimsuit became more edgy, if you will, during this decade. They went from like a one piece to the two piece, but their two piece was mostly a one piece with the middle cut out. So it's still very high waisted. It came up still very far above the belly button. So it was just a couple inches of their midriff that was showing until in 1946, bikini was invented and it became much more tight and shortened a lot. And this is also a trend that you would see return to today's fashion, in that we wear high waisted bottoms a lot more today in our swimsuits. Men's fashion varied quite a bit from pre war to post war. So, pre war, they had much more simple and restrictive suit looks, but that's what we would consider a timeless look today. So it would include a slim fit suit in very reserved colors of navy or black with a white shirt, and again, reserved colors of ties, navy or black, with wingtip shoes. And post-war, they got a little bit more eccentric. The suits were more loose and they added colored shirt options as well as colored and patterned ties and pocket squares. And then for extra accessorizing, they would use tie pins a lot. The post-war fashion was also a lot more casual. Hawaiian shirts were very in, and this reflected more of the relaxed and fun-focused mood after the war. They would pair it with some simple shorts or slacks, and then boat shoes, and accessorize with a bow tie, a watch, or a hat. Thank you.